Hey, welcome to John's Long Box. Today we're going to be talking about monsters and comics. And I will let you decide which of our next two guests are the monster and the comic. Well, let me introduce Bryan Baugh of Wolf and Batsy. And we have Fabrizio Aiello of Horace H. Hoover.
What's going on?
Thank you guys for coming. This is great.
My pleasure.
Yeah, I hope everybody hears us. First person in the comments, just give us a shout out. Make sure I had my computer crash today and I'm working from a backup. So I don't know if it looks good, sounds good. Somebody, I'm assuming we're fine, but let's begin with our show. Thanks a lot. Oh, I want to say these are my two favorite comic books that are coming out right now. If I could get Stan Sakai of Yusaki Yojimbo, I would have my three favorite comic books right now. This would be awesome.
Man.
Well, thank you very much. That's
very
sweet.
Hello, Dr. Mask. Do we look good? Do we sound good before I find out we've been talking and nothing to... Oh, wait, why can't I get... I'm trying to get... forget it. I was trying to get your names. Does that work?
Yeah. I
Okay,
saw that pop up.
Oh, well.
We're good.
Okay. All right. Looking good. All right. We can begin now. So this is we're going to talk about monsters and comics, and I figure who better than Bryan Baugh and Fabrizio Aiello. So thanks a lot, guys.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, it should be fun.
This is great. I figured we start with the definition. How do you guys define a monster?
That which cannot be explained.
Yeah. Like, okay, let's say we all agree Frankenstein, the creature, is a monster. Sure. A werewolf is a monster. Right? But is Godzilla a monster?
Yeah, he's the king of the monsters. That's his tagline.
Yeah.
What about Jason Voorhees?
After part 7, he is, because he comes back as a zombie.
Okay, but a human being is not a monster, like Ted Bundy?
Well, then you go. There's one of those questions: is human monsters? That's a psychological monster, I guess, right? Yeah. But not a supernatural monster. I prefer the supernatural kind. Although serial killers are fascinating.
So, Fabrizio, do you think a monster has to have some sort of supernatural origins or supernatural nature?
I think so. There has to be something. It could be small too. It could be
barrier, like Chucky.
It could be something really small about a person that just sets me on edge, you know, okay. Just like a little bit of asymmetry, maybe a little hump. And I'm like, ugh. It's like whenever you see a corgi, I don't know about you guys, but corgis freak me out.
Really?
Because of the hands, like the legs are too short. They're not like, so it's just like that ill proportion, just like, ugh. Like, so serial killers, corgis, kind of in the same group.
Oh man, I was gonna make up a story with the corgi character. Now I gotta change it to a Doberman or something. I tend to agree. Like I used to, like when we talk about serial killers or murderers or whatever, we call them monsters and stuff. But I kind of agree with Bryan. For something to be a monster, it has to be something beyond humanity. You know, like I'm trying to think now. Is there a good term to for a monstrous human, like a Hitler or but anyway. So my next question, what is your favorite monster? I think I already know yours, Bryan.
Yeah, I think we've talked about that before.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Fabrizio.
I mean, my favorite monster is probably Frankenstein's monster. It's one of my favorite books of all time, or Nosferatu vampire type stuff. Those are the two things that I'm just utterly obsessed with, and I have been since I was a young kid. So I will say the one thing about monsters, though, and I don't know what you guys think about this, is I'm never afraid of monsters, ever. They could be like Cthulhu type cosmic gods. They could be small little weird creatures, but they don't scare me. They're just cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that?
Yes.
Oh, no, I totally agree with you. So that begs the question: what scares you?
Ted Bundy.
I will say, like, I'll watch a monster movie and laugh. It was a Halloween tradition that my older brothers, as much as I'm into comic books, he's into horror movies. Him and Bryan put him in a room, Just, there would be no oxygen left for anybody else. But he used to take me to every Friday the 13th movie, like religiously, whenever it came out. And we just laughed through them. We weren't scared at all. But I watched The Hitcher with Rutger Hauer.
That's a great one.
And that scares me. That scares the crap out of me because
he's scary in that movie.
Yeah. Like something like things that can happen scare me. Things that can't happen don't scare me. And right. I at the time I was driving across the country. I was a school teacher, and every summer I would drive around and I'm going to pick up that. Nope, that could be the guy that ties me to two different trucks and pulls me apart. So, so what scares you, Brian?
Claustrophobia.
Okay.
I have to say, which I didn't know I had until 2015, I think it was, when I had to go to the hospital and I got an MRI.
Oh.
And they put me in one of those tubes. And I remember when they asked me if that was okay, I was like, or if I wanted the kind of medicine that kind of makes you drowsy so you don't really experience it too much. I was like, I don't need that, because I'd seen House MD where the the MRI machine is like this giant tube. but I was like, when they put me actually in it, it was like, the top of the thing was this close to my face, and they're like, you cannot move.
Yeah,
the procedure is done. And just that's like saying, don't think about a pink elephant.
Yeah.
All you want to do is move. But that was like torture. So yeah, I that scares me. And whenever that subject comes up, I always remind people of that movie, The Descent, about the young ladies who go on a spelunking adventure in the caves. And they're going through the caves, and when they get deep in there, they find out that there's this race of hideous, disgusting, horrible monsters in the cave that are eating everyone who comes in. But it's a great movie where the monsters are cool, and the monsters are definitely scary, but there's nothing scarier in the movie than all of the different nightmarish things that happen to them when things start going wrong way deep underground, and they get caught in little tunnels where they can't breathe because it's too tight, or they almost fall into a pit, or whatever, or someone gets a compound fracture. It's like the cave part is worse than the monsters.
Oh yeah,
but the monsters are good in that one though.
I have to. You made me think about it. I got an MRI a couple of years ago because it hurt my back, and I was like, yeah, this same thing. You want to go? And I went in, and for 2 minutes I was fine, and all of a sudden I started to panic. Like, I'm not talking scared, I'm talking panic.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if the magnetic field has something to do with that. Like being immersed in the magnetic field, like is it pulling our blood? And you know what I mean? Like, because I work in confined spaces at work, and I don't really get scared. I was like borderline panicking.
That's interesting. I never thought about that before, but I also have an MRI story. It's the same deal. Terrified. And the fact is, the thing that makes it worse. So I go into the hospital, and they're like, okay, you ready for your MRI? I'm like, yep. And then they take me outside. I'm like, this is kind of weird. Yeah. Into a trailer, and then into an MRI machine. So it was like MRI Inception or something.
Oh,
it was like,
wow.
I'm like, this is every level of claustrophobia. But it was so loud. That's what makes it even worse. It's like the noise of the MRI.
Yeah.
Going underground, I have some pictures on my phone. Now you make me. I should put them on Twitter, and because I'm in construction, and my 2 jobs ago I was at the East Side Access, which is I don't know what you know about Manhattan, but they're building it's like a city underground, and they're connecting Penn Station to Grand Central Station so that subways can go, so you could travel, and it's an underground city. Right now it's beautiful, like it's stores and malls and everything, it's open. But while I was there, it was dirts, and it was just the girders and like the feet of buildings. So we were walking through dirt, and there was like lights, and you'd see like the concrete supports of buildings, and then you'd hear water dripping. It was like being in like the underdwellers from the Planet of the Apes land.
Man,
I was thinking of the Mole Man from the Fantastic Four was going to come out and get me. Like I'll turn the corner and the Valley of Diamonds would show up. It was scary. And then sometimes I'd have to work there at night by myself, because the electrician has to be there to maintain lights. God forbid the lights go out. So I'm walking, and you hear footprints behind you. I don't know, 700 feet below the Manhattan, in mud up to your knees, and you hear footsteps, and then when you stop, and then turn, and it's raccoons. You know, you're like, scariest thing.
Wow.
So raccoons are monsters is the point I'm trying to make.
Well, actually, I have to go back and answer the original question about favorite monster.
Okay, yes,
You got to give me an excuse to do that.
Yes.
So obviously, I mean, absolutely, I love them all. Frankenstein's monsters, wonderful. I love Nosferatu. I love ancient vampires like that. But my favorite monster that I feel the most kinship with is the Wolfman, for sure. The original Wolfman, Larry Talbot.
Yep.
Played by Lon Chaney Jr. I just feel so simpatico with that guy. Love everything. I mean, from the time I was a kid, I just thought coolest looking monster to me. And then I thought, and then I just, the older you get, the more that story means to you, because he's a man who's a good man who wants to be good, but he has this thing in him. And actually, there was a really great interview I saw with John Landis talking about the Wolfman one time, where he said the greatest thing about it ever that totally sums it up. He goes, Larry Talbot is a man who has cancer, but instead of killing him, it's making him kill everybody else.
Wow.
And I thought that was so great.
Cool idea.
Yeah. I thought that was so great. I wish I'd thought to say that before he did. but it's true. It's like he feels terrible about what he is and what he's doing, and it's a perfect metaphor for the sin nature, you know, and it's all of that. But on top, most important of all, from a childlike perspective, it's just the coolest looking monster.
It is a cool monster, and I think every kid kind of identifies with it, because what you have, little kids are rage monsters.
Yeah.
And, you know, and you got to teach them to control themselves. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, can you just imagine if you never taught your children, or your parents never taught you to behave? I'd just be like, you know, at work, like, hey, you hand me a screwdriver. No. So that's what we're doing. We're controlling the werewolf inside of us, you know?
Yeah. And if you could just kill all your enemies and have an excuse that you didn't really do it.
I find the monster that I love vampires out of all the monsters. I don't know what it is about vampires, and but I just can't stand that they're like romantic and sexy and cool. Like I think it was now I can't remember the guy's name. The guy who directed the Hellboy movie, Guillermo del Toro.
Del Toro, yes.
He said, where vampires should be scary. You know, the attractive nature of them is like the bait, and I thought that was so good. And you know, I just don't like. I didn't see the Twilight movies, but I don't like this romantic.
Those don't count in this. No need to even name those.
Yeah,
in this conversation.
Wrong crowd. wrong crowd. Ooh, I'll let myself out. I read the Anne Rice books, and I love the fake history, but like the vampires were still. They feed on humans. You know what I mean? Like if cows were to write books, humans would be the monsters.
Right.
I don't think cows would be like, well, humans.
And in all the I love the ancient stories about vampires where they're literally just a rotting corpse.
Yeah.
You know, and like Fabrizio was talking about how he's obsessed with Frankenstein, the book, you know, I'm that way with Dracula, the novel. And the great thing about the novel is it's basically Nosferatu. I mean, he's not, there's all that sexy romantic vampire nonsense. That's Hollywood construction. He was not that way in the book at all. He's a repellent old man who turns young after he drinks blood, but he is thoroughly repellent to the good guys all throughout the book. He's never once attractive. It's an attack when he seduces those women and takes their blood. It's not, and they wake up thinking they had a nightmare. It's so much scarier in the book. I
like in the Alan Moore's League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, the comic, Mina Harker wears a scarf. Finally reveals her neck, and it's just destroyed. Yeah. What do you think a vampire does? You know, and Alan Quartermain is like, whoa, you know, I kind of like that. And so let me ask you, what's your favorite monster movie?
Oh, for crying out loud! That's like,
I know.
How do you pinpoint one?
I mean,
I love them all.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I don't watch a lot of monster movies. I like supernatural, sort of occult themed movies. Like The Ninth Gate is probably one of my all-time favorite movies. But there's, there's kind of a demon girl there, I guess. vampire movies, I don't know if I really like any of them. I mean, the Coppola, speaking of the romantic vampire, that's Coppola, you know.
I love that
his
movie.
Dracula.
Right.
Yeah, I think the first part is good, but there's like the romantic part where
it's like in 3 parts. The first part and the third part are good and fairly true to the book. The frustrating middle section, it's like it just can't resist going off the rails into Hollywood La La Land, you know?
Yeah.
And it does the romantic thing. But
I remember hating it when I saw it, and then on second watch, I got all the emotion out and I just observed it, and I was like, it's better than I thought.
Yeah, well, I just love the artful visual. It's a visual feast for the eyes. I mean,
That's what Coppola said. He
beautifully
goes,
shot.
Be an opera translated into a movie, and then I liked it better because you watching that train on the mountains. It's obviously a model.
Yeah,
Keanu Reeves can't act as much as I love. He's one of the only actors I like. He can't act, and then you could see like his white hair is not white in one scene and it's white. Like it was just obvious mistakes.
Well, he did age from fear. His hair did turn white from fear, but I mean, it's just visually that movie's so inventive and just so fun to look at, you know. And plus, growing up, knowing the Dracula book and growing up with 1,000 Dracula movies, seeing them all, and how none of them are like the book. It's like you get a thick skin, you know. It's like I can I love some
Fantastic Four movies.
Yeah, it's like I watch enough slasher movie sequels, and you develop a thick skin for bad movies too. It's like you just kind of. You know, you just kind of love them anyway. And you just sort of go, well, fine, it has this flaw, but whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, though, as far as Frankenstein movies, like the Kenneth Branagh one, no.
Right, yeah.
Is that the one with Robert De Niro?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with you on that.
No, I've never seen that one.
Sounds
like I ain't missing much.
I love Kenneth Branagh and obviously De Niro. I mean, it should have been good. Kenneth Branagh has done some good movies since then, but man, that's not watchable.
I don't care for that one either, honestly.
I got to say, my favorite vampire movie is 30 Days of Night. I mean, those are monsters that are just coming into your town to murder everybody with this cover of darkness so that they could just have this murder orgy. I think it is just such a scary concept, you know?
That's a great movie, yeah.
I love Fright Night.
Oh, Fright Night. I think that's my most watched vampire movie.
The original Fright Night from '85. I saw that in the theater with my dad when it came out. I just love that movie.
I saw that on HBO 800 million times.
Oh yeah, me too. I've probably got that one memorized. And I love a lot. I mean, there's a long list of old vampire movies I could go through that I just adore.
Brian started getting me watching what's the Karnstein trilogy?
Karnstein trilogy from Hammer Films.
The Hammer Films. For those who don't know what we're talking about, Hammer was a studio that
in England.
Yeah, they only folded in like 2017. I didn't know that.
Well, that's not true. They were like from 1958 or 57, 58, whenever Horror of Dracula came out with Christopher Lee, all the way up through, or Curse of Frankenstein. And they went all the way up through the 70s, or somewhere around 77, somewhere around there, they went out of business and they closed down, and then they started up again in the 2000s.
Oh, it's a different. Okay, I didn't know that. So they resurrected like a corpse.
Yeah, basically, and they put out a few movies that were decent.
Yeah,
but the good ones are the old ones, you know.
I used to watch those like on Sunday after church with my dad on regular TV, and then watching them on streaming, uncut, uncensored. These are different movies than I remember.
The Blu-rays are terrific. They're all uncut. They have great commentary tracks with film historians telling you all about them, and behind the scenes features, and they're just great. I just love Hammer.
Yeah, so good. Let's get to werewolf movies. What's your favorite werewolf movie?
Brian,
are you asking me? Okay.
Either one of you guys.
All 5 of the Lawrence Talbot Wolfman movies. all 5 of them. If you need me to name them, I will. The Howling, American Werewolf in London. Those are my favorites. Oh, well, gosh. All the Paul Naschy movies, which he made like 20 of them in Spain. I love every single one of those. Frankenstein's Bloody Terror, Howl of the Wolfman, Return of the Wolfman, all those movies. The Night of Walpurgis, the Werewolf versus the Vampire Women. I love
the first one I never heard of.
Jesus, that's a lot of movies.
I love that one so much. The Werewolf versus the Vampire Women is maybe one of the most inspirational movies to my comics. Like that, I just watch it and I go, yes, this is like the vibe I'm trying to capture. And Paul Naschy is my hero because, like I watch his movies and I'm just like, this guy is like doing with movies what I want to do with comic books. He's such a big kid who's just like having fun making monster stories. The bloodier, the better. The more spicy scenes he can put in there with the hot chicks he does. It's like he's just having a ball. And he made, I don't know how many movies he made. 20, 30 some movies over the course of the 60s and 70s, right up to the 80s. And huge filmography. I love the guy. He was Spain's master of horror.
Okay.
But he did like 20 movies about this character that he played himself called Waldemar Daniski, the El Hombre Lobo, the Spanish Wolfman, and they're just so much fun.
Oh, that sounds great. I'm gonna have to watch this, write these names down, and watch, and get these movies, because I was keeping up with you until about 6 or 7 movies in, and then I started like, okay, now I don't.
But The Howling is maybe one of my favorites. The Howling in the original Wolfman and Frankenstein versus the Wolfman and House of Frankenstein. Those, but especially The Howling. The Howling was such a big influence on me in terms of like Wolf in my comic book, Wolf and Batsy. Like I mean, he's definitely one of them. He's from that same breed for sure.
That's interesting. It sounds like you really pull from movies more so than books. Are there sort of like werewolf? Is there like a quintessential werewolf book, or
there's a book by well, if you mean novel fiction or non-fiction.
Yeah.
Yes. Is it like a Frankenstein of the
werewolf? Well, the movie Curse of the Werewolf with Oliver Reed from Hammer. That's based on
Reed is a werewolf, so that doesn't.
Well, that movie, that's a classic werewolf movie. I love that one too. That one is based on a book called The Werewolf of Paris by Guy Endore. I think it's by Guy Endore. Same guy that wrote Phantom of the Opera, I think.
Oh, that's a different name. I read.
Sorry. Now I got to go look it up. Anyway, Curse of the Werewolf is awesome, and it's based on a book, and that's considered one of the sort of quintessential vampire works of classic fiction, as close as you can get. I mean, unless you count Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde as a werewolf story. Some people do.
It's an okay book.
Mr. Hyde is one of my favorite books, and
really,
I think it's one of the scariest books. I read that book, and then I had to write a paper on it in college, and I was like, I can't write what I really think. Like, I thought my teacher was going to get mad at me, and then I was like, you know what? This is what I think. I'm not going to start censoring myself. So I said, Dr. Jekyll knew exactly what he was doing. He was a pervert, and he created this alter ego to disguise himself. Like Mr. Hyde was actually smaller and denser. I said he unleashed his inner child to go out and sexually assault women, so he then come back and transform himself back. It wasn't me. It wasn't me. Like, that's what he wanted. And my professor goes, "You got it." I was like, "Oh, I was gonna."
All right, I have to correct myself. Werewolf of Paris by Guy Endore. Phantom of the Opera was written by Gaston Leroux. I just double checked myself. Anyway, Curse of the Werewolf with Oliver Reed, great werewolf movie from the 60s, based on The Werewolf of Paris. That's as close as you get to a classic work of literature about a werewolf. But like all the ideas about the full moon and everything like that, and silver bullets and all that stuff, Kurt Siodmak, the guy that wrote the original Wolfman from 1940, he made up all that stuff. But it's so ingrained in the culture that people think it's ancient legends, but actually it's not at all. He just made that up off the top of his head for the Wolfman when he wrote it.
As far as I know, and I'm sure Brian knows better, the werewolves, I think, they originated in ancient Greece. Weren't they like a tribe of warriors that hunted wolves and wore their skins to intimidate other tribes?
Berserkers.
That was
might be something.
They will wear bears, which I
might
think
be something like that. But there's accounts of werewolves going way, way, way back.
Yeah, I'm talking like the Mycenaean Greeks. Because they were legendary, mythological by the time the classic Greek. I just want to adjust what Ryan said. I'm the only one who grew up in New York. Fabrizio, you're
middle of nowhere, PA.
Right, and Brian, right? You're
Ohio.
Yeah, so I grew up in New York, as you could tell by my my accent. I love one of the comments the other night with Ethan. They said it's New York accent versus the New Jersey accent.
Yeah, that was funny. I did see that.
The Power Records adaptation.
Power Records adaptation of Werewolf by Night. I think I had that as a kid, actually. I think I did. I had a bunch of those Power Records when I was a kid. But they did do one that was Werewolf by Night.
We're talking about the little albums you put on your turntable with a comic book, right?
Yeah, they did a Tomb of Dracula one.
I had the Werewolf by Night. I had a Captain America, and I had a Fantastic Four one.
Yeah,
and a Man-Thing.
yeah. My sister had a Wonder Woman one. I think I had a Hulk one too. But that's my family. My mom was so good about making sure we kept all our stuff from when we were kids. I still got most of my toys and stuff, but that's something we lost. I really don't know what happened to my Power Records.
Yeah, my mom, like, just because of 7 kids, she didn't want us to ruin our toys, so she didn't have to want to keep buying them. But me personally, I was meticulous about my toys to the point where I wouldn't let my friends play with them because they made the wrong noises and voices. So they would.
To this day, I don't lend anybody my books because I don't break the spine. So there's not one spine broken.
I respect that.
You guys have books.
I'm a sociopath. I know.
Monsters and comics, but you made me think of this. I went into a bookstore in Albuquerque, and it was a beautiful bookstore. It was like if you were to build a movie set of a bookstore, a little cute little hippie woman, coffee smell, the wood smell of the shelves. And I just looked, and there was a To Kill a Mockingbird, a little hardcover To Kill a Mockingbird, and I opened it, and it was first printing, and it started to make that creaking noise. The spine was never open, and I closed it. $2. I still have it. I've never read it. I bought another copy just to read it.
Can I give you a little bit?
That's the kind of freak I am about my stuff. I never let out my toys. One of my friends just borrowed a stack of comic books. I can't sleep until I get the comics back.
Can I give you a little bit of collector bragging right there?
Sure.
So Dracula was originally published in England in 1897. But it wasn't published in America until 1927. I got a first printing from 1927 of Dracula.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
Little hardcover.
That's cool.
There's nothing impressive about it.
No, I'm impressed.
It just has a little kind of yellowish cover on it, but it's the first one. I forget. I found it like way back when eBay first started. Somebody had it on there, and they weren't selling it for high prices. It was before eBay kind of went crazy with the
eBay was the best thing and the worst thing for collectors. It took kind of the fun of finding stuff, but you could find stuff.
Yeah, you can find anything now.
RJ from the Fourth Age says his wolf girl comes from Norse myth.
Okay.
RJ is the creator of the Valiant universe, and he has Crom the Destroyer on Indiegogo. Right? RJ, send me the links, and I'll put it in the description. And you guys send me whatever links you want too. Yeah,
I know the Fourth Age. I've watched that.
Yeah, RJ.
No, yeah, for sure.
I love RJ. I'll always support RJ.
Yeah, I like his channel. I like some of his theories he talks about on there. Good stuff.
Yeah, interesting.
Thought provoking.
Thank you, RJ.
So we haven't talked about Lovecraft monsters.
Okay, yeah, I was building up the Lovecraft.
I'm sorry. I don't want to jump ahead. If we want to stay in actually, I mentioned this. What about, and this may be blasphemy, but Abbott and Costello? I actually love their monster movie.
Oh,
movies.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I'm waiting for Brian to jump in because I already knew you loved this.
1,000,000%.
I grew up on those, and I loved them.
Sure, absolutely. And they treated monsters with respect, which is what's good about them, And the Wolfman looks good in that. Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein. Now you want to talk about blasphemy? A lot of people discount that because they said that's not Jack Pierce's makeup job. That's after I think the Westmores took over at Universal and started doing the makeups. So it's not the cotton and collodion buildup that Jack Pierce would do on the original Wolfman. It's rubber appliance stuff going on there. But he looks good in that movie. I got a real nice big 11x17 framed picture of him that I used to have in my house before we moved. But I got to get that back. That is so good. That is I can go on and on. I love Abbott and Costello.
Everybody said I look like
me too.
So
Man, you're like a movie historian. You really know.
I tried
like,
stuff Brian once. I learned right away.
No, I just like stuff. But you know what? The one Abbott and Costello movie that always kind of makes me go, ugh, is the Meets the Mummy. Only because on Saturday afternoon Shock Theater when I was a kid, they would always play that one. Always. And I was always like, I want Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. That's the great one, you know? But they would always, which they'd play every once in a while, but they'd play the frickin' Abbott and Costello Meets the Mummy to death. And I'd be like, again? But have you seen the Abbott and Costello Meet Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde? That's a pretty good one too.
I don't know if I have. I have a collection that I haven't like looked at yet in a while.
Watch that one. That one's really fun.
Do you see this comment? Kevin Ryan says his friend has an original letter by William Polidori attesting to the fact that Mary Shelley was, and not Byron, wrote Frankenstein.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, how cool is that? It belongs in a museum.
Yeah.
It's very controversial, we'll say, but I totally believe it 100%.
Yeah. I would agree with that.
And Polidori was there at the Villa did you ever see that movie American Gothic?
Oh, Gothic. Ken Russell's movie, yeah.
Yeah. It's a great bad movie. I love it, but it's flawed.
It's a glorious retelling of the stormy night that Byron and Polidori and the Shelleys were all at the mansion, and they were inspired to write The Vampire and Frankenstein. But it's so over the top and ridiculous and Ken Russell-y that it's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, my favorite line in that movie, and I found it to be like a very inspiring line, and is they're watching the tree, and they're all under the influence of abstinence, and he's like, "Look, the tree moved! Look, know," and he goes, and then they realize that they're under the influence, and Polidori's kind of upset, and Shelley goes, "No," he goes, "We are gods. Our mind created that tree. Our minds gave that tree animation and life." You know, he goes, the mind, I know I'm butchering it, but he was just basically saying, look at the power of the imagination. We believed that tree was alive and moving for a split second, and who's to say it wasn't? That is the power. And I thought that was so good.
Yeah, it's a fun movie. I really, there's an actress in there named Miriam Sir, and she's nuts. She's crazy. But that movie came out when I was in college, so I thought she was cool. But there's a moment in that movie. I shouldn't tell this, but there's a moment in that movie I robbed for Wolf and Batsy. But it's in one of the issues that is not.
Okay, I don't think Kurt Russell pays it.
Ken Russell. It's a one little moment that I thought was so cool with her, that actress, and I borrowed it and had Batsy do a similar thing. But it's in a story that won't come out from Alterna for a long, long time. It's way down the road, but it's one that I did in my self-publishing days that isn't out yet. But
I think I know the scene. The eyeballs.
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay. So I do want to mention, just because it's my favorite book of all time, and this whole thing comes up, and people, they dismiss it as being, it's because it was a woman that wrote it and all that kind of stuff. I would say at minimum, heavily influenced, or she received help from somebody. That's my thing, because she was really young when she did it. And there are things in that book that, unless you've lived a very specifically long life, like insights that I just don't know how somebody writes that.
That's fascinating. That's something I'd love to know more about.
So at Dr. Are You the Wolf and Batsy artist? No, Bryan Baugh is the writer and the artist of Wolf and Batsy.
Guilty as charged.
Yes. And I got to say that issue 7, it is. I saw somebody today compare it to Bernie Wrightson, and I definitely realized
I don't deserve that. That's awesome, but I'm not worthy of that level of praise. But that's very sweet that someone would think that. But Fabrizio, geez, my mouth, too much coffee. Fabrizio is the writer, colorist, everything of Horace H. Hoover. So
yeah.
The most wonderfully weird comic to come along in many years, in my opinion.
Yeah, I said Fabrizio. I think his target audience was me. I don't know this guy, but I know he's gonna like it.
I think we all have kind of similar taste. Like speaking of the latest Bryan, the Wolf and Batsy one, I love stories within stories. It's one of my favorite
cool
things. And as soon as the book starts, I'm like, I'm gonna like it, and off the bat, and I loved it.
Oh,
but that's a Lovecraftian thing. I just love stories inside of stories.
Oh yeah, like Call of Cthulhu is like one of those what do you call it, Russian dolls, where you open up one and there's a smaller one,
Dolls.
Call of Cthulhu just goes deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. Stories within stories, like crazy.
Yeah.
It's amazing. The other one I love, if you want to talk Lovecraft, I love the Case of Charles Dexter Ward.
That's my favorite.
He has a fascinating backstory in the middle of that one where he's talking about these guys who were smuggling mummies in like George Washington times.
Yep.
Which is such a weird time to think about something like that happening, because they were like grinding them up for mummy dust, right? To make an elixir to preserve people's youth, which is such a great idea too.
Yeah, it's funny because as a huge Lovecraft fan, I mean, I have a few favorites. Rats in the Walls, maybe my favorite. Okay. But do you know Picture in the House? It's a really short story. It's 6 pages, and I absolutely love it. There are no monsters.
My mind is
it's just a guy on a bike. It's raining out. He goes into this what looks like an abandoned house. There's an old guy there and a creepy cannibal book. And
oh my God,
I love this story so much.
That story gives me the chills.
Yeah.
Picture in the House. Yes.
Yeah, that's
even
cool.
more.
And that's a real photograph.
It's a real book. Yeah.
You could look that up. Oh my God. Yeah, that is awesome.
Yeah, and there's no giant cosmic monsters or anything. But something about it.
I agree. Some of his best stories are the more down to earth ones. I love The Hound. I love his Reanimator stories. I love all those. You know, they're even though they're shorter and they're more earthbound.
Yeah, I like
Shadow over Innsmouth is my favorite.
That the scene in Shadow of Innsmouth when I can't remember the character's name, but he's in the hotel room and he's got the gun on him, and he hears the doorknob to the left. He's in a hotel room and there's the door to the hallway. There's the door to another room, and there's a door to, and he locks them all because he's freaked out. And he hears the doorknob rattle over here, and then he hears the footsteps go to the other room, and he hears the doorknob there, and then he's not waiting for the front door because he knows they have the key, so he jumps up to it. Oh my God, I'm reading that, biting my nails. You know, it was so good.
Yeah,
fish people.
Yep, those damn fish people.
Yeah, I love. That's one thing I love about Lovecraft is the secret things in his stories. You know, the mystery of what's wrong with Innsmouth and the guy trying to find out, and then again in Charles Dexter Ward, there's something that really creeped me out in there where he finds an old book and he's looking for information and nothing seems to be wrong, but then he finds there's 2 pages that are glued together. And he has to carefully open them up, and then he finds the horrible information. It was hidden intentionally by someone who glued the pages together.
Was it Kerwin? Was that the name of the wizard?
Yeah.
Yep. So things like that I just find incredibly creepy. Like things that happened a long time ago, and someone covered it up. And I love that stuff.
I'll answer this question right now. As I commute to work, I've been listening to the Lovecraft Historical Society on audiobooks. You know, I got it off of Audible. You know,
are they the ones that dramatize it?
Yes.
Yeah. My favorite audiobooks of Lovecraft are the ones narrated by Wayne June. He has the most perfect, deep, creepy voice for Lovecraft I've ever heard. They came out in the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, somewhere in there. And they were on iTunes for the longest time, and then they just vanished. And right before they vanished, my wife bought me a bunch of them on CD for my birthday, just so I'd have hard copies of them. But I don't know if you can still get them on iTunes or not. But nobody has ever read Lovecraft better than that guy. Look into that. I recommend it.
This is my favorite Lovecraft monster, Nyarlathotep.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean it. My wife, we were talking about Lovecraft one day, and I said, amateurs like Cthulhu, and then she put her hand down.
Yeah, right. He's the Dreams in the Witch House.
That's a great one.
Nyarlathotep. I'm listening to the LibriVox.
Oh yeah, those are good.
Yeah, those are good.
I don't know what that is. That's an alternate to Audible or something?
They're free on YouTube.
Oh, okay.
A lot of the ones on LibriVox were things that people were making almost on a volunteer basis, like people who just wanted to create their own audiobooks, basically, and they put them up on for free. I found a lot of things that way.
So RJ wants to know, what do we think of the Lovecraft and Robert E. Howard connection?
I find it fascinating that those two guys were friends and correspondents.
Yeah. As far as I know, they only met like once, right?
I've read some different things about that. Like I read this one great article. What's the guy's name? S.T. Joshi. He's the top Lovecraft scholar guy. He had a great thing where he was talking about Lovecraft one time. He's like, everybody talks about Lovecraft like he's this recluse, scared of people, whatever. But the truth is, he did tons of traveling and going all over the place just because he was fascinated with architecture and he wanted to see architecture in different places. He visited his friends. I'm sure Fabrizio, the different friends. Some of these guys, he was, who's the guy, the other Weird Tales writer, not Howard.
August Derleth?
Not August Derleth.
The younger guy, I know.
You know, Robert Bloch.
Yes, Robert Bloch.
He mentored Robert Bloch, basically, like when Robert Bloch was like 16, wrote him a fan letter. But who am I thinking of? Who's that other guy?
Bloch.
It's on the tip of my tongue.
I don't know.
The other famous Weird Tales guy. Sorry, we're wasting showtime.
It's okay.
In a
3-day weekend. I got no.
It's okay.
Yeah, I find my wife and we drove up to Providence, and just because I got a list of all the addresses to go to, and I took pictures. I guess I'll put those up on my community post now that I'm thinking about it, and I'm sure it was suggestion, but my wife is like, "We're not staying over here overnight." I'm like, something about the town of Providence. It just made me feel like there were witches in every corner. I could see why Lovecraft's whole family went crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I was in a Hammer film.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's something about the architecture. I mean, those old colonials, they're so old. A lot of them are wood. They kind of sway a little bit. The roofs are just, everything's just a little off, and everything has dormers. And to me, when I see a dormer, I'm like, there's some sort of occult sacrifice going on in that dormer. This could be all dormers. Nothing good happens in a dormer.
Clark Ashton Smith.
That's it.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
Anyway, he was friends with all those guys, and he would travel.
I like how Brian won't give up. I'm just like, I don't know. I'm crazy.
Me too. I'm like, I'll figure it out later.
What's the most persistent monster? That's the monster, Brian.
I just have to know.
Monster.
Have you guys read Robert E. Howard?
Mm-hmm.
I read the first Conan book, first Conan story, excuse me, and I didn't like sword and sorcery for the longest time until only because of RJ did I start getting back into it. I just bought the collected edition, but
did you see the ones that Mark Schultz did the illustrations that came out some years ago?
Mark Schultz,
those are amazing. There was some. I don't remember which publisher it was. They put out a series of 3 trade paperback format books, but they were the fiction. They were just in that soft cover format. But the first one they were all the Conan stories in order, like in the order that they were published. Instead of what usually happens. Usually when those collections come out, they're ordered from when he was youngest to when he was oldest.
Yeah.
Whereas when Howard wrote
in chronological order.
Yeah. Whereas when Howard wrote them, he kind of bounced all through Conan's lifetime. So this publisher put them out all in order. But the first volume was called The Coming of Conan the Cimmerian, and it was all the illustrations were by Mark Schultz, the guy that did Xenozoic Tales.
Yeah.
Who's an extraordinary illustrator.
Yeah.
He had his own take on it, and it was great.
He's one of my favorite artists, hands down. I didn't know that existed. That's something I got to look up.
You got to look those up. But there's like 3 volumes that collect them all. But they're great, and his horror stories are good too. But I mean, when I read Howard, I like his Conan stuff best. I think that's just where his heart was most. But he did some good horror stories.
I always think of like H.P. Lovecraft and Robert Howard and all those guys. Like, if only like the internet existed, or maybe they had better access, like they would be playing Dungeons and Dragons with each other. You know what I mean? Like, you can find monsters. Robert E. Howard's playing the warrior character. Lovecraft is playing the priest character,
the sorcerer.
Yeah.
Lovecraft would write those big long texts that nobody would read on the message boards.
And then it's just like, I don't want to play with Tolkien anymore. He won't let us make our own choices.
I mean, honestly, whenever I'm writing and drawing, I feel like I'm playing with toys. That's really the best way to describe it. I mean,
absolutely,
just moving little people around, get to do what you want with them.
Mm-hmm.
I know this has nothing to do. Well, it's comics. We're talking comics monsters. Do you feel bad when you do mean things to your characters?
No, death is just part of the ball game.
Right. Yeah. I find that like
Wolf and Bats, you have to eat.
Yeah. Well, they're doing bad things to other characters. I'm talking about if anything happens to Horace or anything that happens to Wolf and Batsy. You're like, I don't.
Oh no, I love to beat them up. It's so much fun to treat your main character like a loser and just beat the crap out of him. Because Wolf gets mad and comes back twice as ferocious, and Batsy's sympathetic, Yeah. And then you want to rescue her.
When is she going to listen to Wolf? He's always right.
Yeah.
And I love that what you did with Horace. That he's just like, I'm going to go up to to that library room, and the librarian's just like, let the nut job go. He doesn't bother anybody. I thought
that second issue was fantastic.
Yeah, that second
Thank
issue.
you.
I'm trying to. I mean, okay, so this is something I'm always trying to process when I read good stories. Like Wolf and Batsy exist in our world. It's just the world that the news doesn't know about. Because whatever happens gets covered up somehow, or people just don't talk about it, right? But it's our world. It's a weird, version of our world, right? But like, I'm trying to figure out Horace because he walks into a room and there's this gigantic, amazing library with a giant statue, and I love it. But I'm trying to figure out. But then there's parts of it that just seem like some 1930s kind of inner city place, where it's like okay, I want the logic of this explained to me. I love it. And maybe I don't, because I kind of love not knowing. Part of the fun is the mystery.
I'll wait till issue 5 is done, and then I'll ask, because I always try to beat the writer.
Oh, okay.
And I
really don't do that.
Problems because I can't figure out where he's going.
I really don't beat the writer. Not even when I'm watching a movie. I kind of just like roll with it, But after I read a few of them, it's like there's this part of me that wants to know and part of me doesn't want to know, because part of the magic is the mystery of it.
Right.
And if it's not explained, then it remains beyond human comprehension. But there's a part of me that loves it, that wants it to make sense, that wants to, well, at least I want to understand more, or at least I want to understand how your brain works that makes you do that. Like,
I'm trying to know about the vacuum cleaner, but
yes,
I don't want to ask. Like, I want to find out.
I can't tell you how many times I've read your comic book and I've wondered, is that a real vacuum cleaner or a helmet that just happens to look like one, and everybody calls it that?
Accident that we will learn about, like.
Yeah. So. I mean, I don't know how you feel about this, Brian, with your stuff, and as far as spoilers, like there are things that everything's explained to me. Like, I know all of the answers to all this kind of stuff, and I would like to let everyone know. Yeah. But I do want to. There's real specific moments I want them to know.
I get that.
And like, you don't want to drag it out too long, but you don't want to do it right away, because if you do it right away, then you don't build anything up.
I agree. Ambiguity is powerful stuff when you handle it. You know what I mean? The right way. Yeah. I mean, making people want to know.
I don't have a comic book to compare it to, but I've been role playing with the same group of guys for 20 years, and I still haven't told them this plot seeds that have been going on for 15 years and stuff. You know what I mean? Part of it is because we don't play as much as we used to, but it's all one world. It's all interconnected. And every once in a while, one of them will be like, oh my God, that was from 12 years ago. I'm like, yep, you got it. So, yeah.
I had a DM who would not keep a secret. If you just waited long enough at the end of the adventure.
You know how brilliant he was.
Yeah, exactly.
That's hilarious. No, I'm kidding you a little bit, but it's like, You definitely have me as a reader.
Thank you.
I'm sucked in that way where it's like I'm having these. I'm wrestling with this like I want to know everything, and yet I want it to be a mystery. So don't tell me. You got me where you want me, I think.
I will say this. I'm very particular. I didn't want to make anything arbitrary. That was my. I'm like, I don't want to just do things to just do them. I'm not pulling things out of a hat. Everything has a reason and a background. So I'm like, before I sit down to do anything, I do not want to pull like a J.J. Abrams kind of, unexplained thing at the end. That definitely wasn't going to happen.
Oh no!
Right, fair enough.
I'm lost,
fair enough.
And if I see that guy's name on something, I wait till it's done, and I got to let people I trust tell me it was worth it, because he burnt me on Lost. I was like hook, line, and sinker. Oh, this is all going to make sense, because anybody can be weird. Anybody can make a weird It's
okay. Well,
pull it all together.
This brings up an interesting point. How about weird monster movies where they get surreal? How about your David Cronenberg stuff? How about your David Lynch stuff?
Oh, like Videodrome?
Videodrome, I love.
Yeah.
That's a great, great movie. And that's one you can watch and interpret almost like 3 different ways. Because there's so much surreal stuff going on in there. Oh, we have a question about Slurp, who I adore.
Yeah.
Slurp speech. That can be coded. See what he's actually saying. It's a great touch. Oh, yeah. Yeah. You can translate it if you want, and if you have the PDF, I guess.
Oh, okay. That's my question. Can we decode it yet, or have you supplied the code yet?
It's just a font. I was going to make I started an augmented reality app on your phone that's sort of like a decoder ring, which will translate what he's saying. So I will put that on the App Store. I don't know, the next couple of months.
That is cool.
That is hilarious. That's great.
That is great. I just want to address this. I'm not the Chris Claremont of D&D because I'm consistent, and I like to think that I tied up all my loose ends rather than just left them hanging and then get fired. And now I wish Chris Claremont was back.
Yeah.
At the time, I was tired of him, and
were you?
Be careful what you wish for.
I feel like I mean, because I was so into X-Men as a teenager, I feel like I just absorbed Chris Claremont for all the good and bad of it, like a sponge, where it's just like there's a natural Chris Claremont-ness to fall back on that I'm not even aware of sometimes.
It's funny because I will go back and pick up an old book, and I'm like, oh wait, this is Chris Claremont too. Books that in my head I wasn't connecting with him at all. I'm like, oh, really? Another Chris Claremont book. And I'm like, oh, that was also one of my favorite books. It's funny how that works out sometimes.
Yeah.
Dr. Mass asked about Donnie Darko. I have to say Donnie Darko is one of my favorite time travel stories. I
love it.
And very inspirational for a comic book script that I'm working on. I'm very particular about time travel. I know it's not monsters, but I guess we'll talk. This will be the comics portion. To me, you can't alter the past in my logic. So there's one timeline, but you can loop it and it can intersect. And you can continue, but you can't change it. Now, the thing is, if you loop it, if you make picture what I'm doing, if you loop it, you make like a little circle. If you go back in time and shoot your parents, what you did was you created a bubble that then breaks off and removes itself, and the timeline continues. And what you have over here floating away is a fragile paradox, like a soap bubble, where everything travels and then it goes backwards in time and travels, and eventually the energy dissipates and so if you're trapped in the paradox, you need to find a way to get out before you fade away. So I just gave away a plot point to a comic book that I'm working on.
I really like Donnie Darko.
You can't. It's self-healing. You can't change the past.
Yeah. Well, I like Donnie Darko a lot. I really felt a weird connection to that movie because in that movie, I think it takes place in like 88.
Yeah,
and he is the exact age that I was in 88. So it felt, and he's growing up in suburbia, it felt I related to it a lot in that way. It felt, I
must have watched that movie 10 to 20, like trying to pick it apart to find the where it breaks down, but it's really good.
Yeah.
And that movie exists within the paradox,
Yeah. Yeah. It's really cool.
And I think you need weird movies. If you just watch the same kind of movie, 3-act structure, blah, 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 over and over again, it will rot your brain. I swear.
Mm-hmm.
You need a David Lynch movie in there. And I know people have a problem with him, but just to shake things up, I'll put a David Lynch movie in. I mean, I love David Lynch's Dune way more than the new one. I don't know if that's controversial.
Oh, really?
I know I'm going to cause problems. I don't like Dune. I don't know. I just don't like the
Dune at all.
Yeah, I tried to read the book.
Man.
Oh, the board game. There's Dune Imperium for anybody who's into board games. Excellent game.
I love the books. Love the books.
Yeah, I go back and I have phases. I love that new movie that they did. I read the first book in high school. I liked the David Lynch movie. I love the ideas and the imagery of it a lot. But I can't say that I'm someone who read the entire series or
even the people who love it say like they stop after like 4 or 5 books. But what do I know?
I don't know. We have one right here. Is that true?
I stopped at the 4th book was when I bailed. I definitely didn't read the new, like his son, I think, picked it up with another. I definitely did not read any of those. But those first few books to me are pretty special.
Wow. Yeah. It's
my favorite David Lynch is Blue Velvet, without a doubt. Blue Velvet. Oh my God. I could watch that movie. Oh, and that's like we're friends, Fabrizio. You want to come over? Let's watch Blue Velvet. And if you go like, man, that sucks. I'm like, well, there's the door.
That's all I need to know about you.
I love the Elephant Man best.
Elephant Man.
Oh, yeah.
And then oh, go ahead.
Yeah, one of my friends, for his birthday every year, he would take us all to the movies. We saw the Black Hole on his first time he did it. The Disney movie. I love that movie.
I love that too.
The Black Stallion the next year. Everybody was like, when's this going to be over? But then we saw the Elephant Man, and I remember one of my friends, another guy named Sean, he was so excited. He thought it was going to be like a monster movie, like a big freaking elephant stomping on people. Livid by the end of the movie. It is bizarre for like a 10th birthday party to take a bunch of kids to see the Elephant Man, but
that's crazy
as a kid.
Yeah, I love the Elephant Man.
Hey Justin, how you doing? Thank you for coming.
Well, I was going to ask, and I haven't noticed this in any of the Wolf and Batsy stuff that I can think of offhand, but in my head there are like 2 buckets of like gross monsters and like cool looking monsters. Do you have that? Like, because I don't do gross monsters for some reason. I just do kind of what I think are cool monsters, but there's definitely like the gross genre. Perfect example is like the Elephant Man or something like that.
Oh yeah.
Well, but the Elephant Man was a real guy though.
I know, but it just reminded me of the idea of just like the gross factor in like a monster.
I don't know. I just love all monsters. I just love them all, and I'll just draw whatever one I feel like drawing or putting in a story. But I don't really think about that. I will say this: one kind of monster that I have kind of gotten really bored of, and when it first started, it was cool, but it's been used to death at this point. Is the one where it's like, I always think of them as the Resident Evil monsters, where it's a normal guy and all of a sudden he goes and it's tentacles all over the place. And I'm not talking about the Thing. I'm not talking about the Thing.
Better not.
The Thing is the Thing. That's classic. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about like starting in the 90s with the Resident Evil video games is where it seemed like every monster was a normal guy who suddenly started growing a giant eyeball here, and then his head turns into a big nest of tentacles, and then he's walking around doing this. There was the Guillermo del Toro, the new TV show, Cabinet of Curiosities. The very first episode had a monster in it that was just like that, and I was like, okay, I love Guillermo del Toro, but and he's got a great imagination for monsters and everything. And well, Guy Davis designed it, I know that, and he's great with his monsters too. But really, that's the best you could come up with? That's what? Come on, guys! Like, do we need another Resident Evil tentacle walking thing? I'm a little bored of those kind of monsters to the point where I don't even find them gross anymore. But everything else, I love to death.
It's interesting.
When you talk about gross monsters and like, I was thinking like a symmetrical monster. Like, would that be like an elegant monster, and like a gross monster would be like misshapen, grotesque?
Like, just to me, tentacles really aren't gross.
Right.
Right.
If you got 5 on this side, 5 on that side.
Although I've used them to death. They're fun to draw.
I mean, I love tentacles. I don't know. It was just something in my head. I don't know if anybody else like sees monsters that way. It's just a weird thing. Well, you mentioned The Thing.
There's the tentacles.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I love tentacles. Anyway, it was just something I thought of when you mentioned the Elephant Man, and I know the Elephant Man is into monsters.
No, I mean, I love tentacle monsters and things like that, but
do you think Mask is a monster?
No, that movie was just boring.
Rusty Dennis.
It freaks me out.
Deformity. You know what? Deformity is scary.
Yeah.
When I was a little kid, I was like 10, I think. 1982, Friday the 13th, Part 3 comes out, and my cousin Steve says, let's go see it. He's like a teenager. And my mom's like, okay. So I see Friday the 13th, Part 3 when I'm 10. And I wasn't scared of the whole movie of him killing everybody, but the ending, when she's in the boat and she looks up at the house, the farmhouse, and Jason appears in the window without his mask, and he's just the deformed face. And as a 10-year-old, I hadn't seen a lot of deformity, but I'd heard about it. And I'm like, that's what a deformed person looks like, you know? Yeah. And that scared me worse thing. That's one of the only horror movies that ever gave me nightmares. That scene at the end.
The first Friday the 13th when he jumped out of the water. Oh my God.
Yeah, at the end, yeah.
Die.
Yeah, deformity. That's like the corgi thing. That's what you're saying, right?
Right.
Well, anything that could be real to me is more scary than things that you know, fantastic. Like I'm not scared of vampires or thing. You know what I mean? Although I love the movie,
work on that.
I'm not scared of them. You know what movie scares me the most? Hands down, my wife laughs at me. Rosemary's Baby to me is the scariest freaking movie. Not because of Satan, but because of this conspiracy of this woman who trusts her husband implicitly, and then he sells her to this cult. I mean, I don't believe in the occult, but I believe that people believe in the occult. Like, you know what I mean? So I do think that there's these creepy people and everybody's in on it. The doctor, the guy in the pharmacy downstairs, the woman in the laundromat that she talks, her whole support group is just pushing her back in like she's like a volleyball back into court. And then she has no choice but like Stockholm syndrome to accept this demonic. Oh my God, does that movie scare me? You know,
and the reason that movie works so good is because it has that, you know, late 60s, early 70s New Hollywood like naturalistic acting where everybody's very believable. Yeah, you know, it never feels like written dialogue. It plays very naturally. You know what I mean?
Yeah, The Exorcist scares me too because not, you know, the when she comes down the stairs but like the whole like they exhaust all their options. Like they do everything logical. Like when I'm in a movie and the guy's like, Brian just got his head cut off, and then Brian's wife goes, "Well, I'm going to go take a shower." And then you're like, "Well, I don't care if you live or die. You're stupid." You know what I mean? But like The Exorcist, the woman, she did science. She went to the doctor. They did the MRIs. They did everything possible. Then she went to the church, and even the church guys were like, "Yeah." And then finally they went to, you know, I love that whole process of like, this is beyond, and then the devil just starts taunting them, you know. Those are, you know, two. And I'm saying I'm not scared of the supernatural, but those are the two movies that scare me the most out of all horror movies.
Yeah.
Yes. So monster movies don't scare me. Supernatural stuff, I love that. I just watched The Pope's Exorcist. I love exorcisms, and I just love that kind of stuff. And ironically, John, the first thing you mentioned was Ted Bundy. Scares, like specifically Ted Bundy. You can ask my wife. I am terrified of Ted Bundy. I know he's dead.
Yeah,
I know he's dead, and I'm
that
not even
stop him, Fabrizio.
I'm not even his type, from what I understand. I'm terrified of Ted Bundy.
Yeah,
that's
interesting.
Me.
I think we all went through like a serial killer phase. Like I must have been like 19 to 21, and I got a series of books about serial killers. I read about like I can't remember, like Sergei Andre or something like he from Russia. He has like the highest body count, and I read them all. I read them all. The Vampire of Dusseldorf, all these real people. But when I got to the Son of Sam,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it was, but that's,
as a New Yorker, I bet.
Yeah, because I remember that. I remember my father wouldn't let my sisters go out because they had the long, straight black hair.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm just like, this guy's just a postal worker whose dog was barking next door and it went berserk. You know what I mean? That could be us.
Couple of years ago, only a year, maybe 2 years ago, there was a great documentary. I think it was on Netflix or maybe Amazon Prime. I don't know if you know the one I'm talking about, but they went into the whole Son of Sam murder series, and they extrapolated this whole conspiracy behind it, like how it had more to do with cults, and they set him up as a patsy. And it was one of those things that sounds so ridiculous on the surface until they start saying, well, yeah, but this happened, and then this happened, and then that happened. And they come up with all these crazy pieces of minutia that just gets you by the middle point. You're just like, wow, maybe that is what happened. It's really good.
Conspiracy theory. Oh my God, do I love a good conspiracy theory. I think anybody who's into comic books or wants wannabe writers, you know, you have to listen to a good conspiracy theory. So Fabrizio, have you listened to this Exorcist Files podcast? This is the first time.
I will absolutely listen to that. I love that kind of stuff. I grew up Catholic, so it's sort of like in my wheelhouse as it is. I will definitely check that out.
Yeah, okay. I'm Irish and Italian, and I was an altar boy.
The same.
Okay, so so one of the best Exorcist ripoffs that I just love is, because it's so gratuitous and salacious and awful and wonderful, is Amityville 2, The Possession.
Is that with Diane Franklin?
Yes. Have you seen that?
Diane Franklin.
I've seen that.
The ending is terrific when the demon the guy rips his face off, and the demon, the early 80s was a great era for faces ripping off special effects. And that's a good one.
It's funny that you brought up Amityville Horror. Just yesterday at work, we were having lunch, and we were talking about buying houses, and one of the guys said, "Would you buy the Amityville Horror house?" And everybody was like, "In a heartbeat." What's the price on it? And I was like, "Yeah, I would buy it," because I might as well tell you this story. The first time I went house hunting, I went up to Garnerville, upstate New York. It's just over the bridge. That's the only reason why I didn't buy this house. It was like, I don't want to cross bridges to get to work because it's only going to cause problems. But the house was $60,000. And if you guys know anything about the real estate in New York, I'm like, and I'm looking, it's a green house. It's a nice house. It's on a hill. It's well manicured. So
it has a boathouse.
It didn't have that, but there was like an electrical tower over there. So I'm thinking, why is this house $60,000? So I have to ask the real estate agent, and she goes, "Well, I have to legally tell you." No, I said, "What, did somebody get murdered in this house?" Like as a joke, and she goes, "Well, I have to legally tell you." Years ago, in the '60s, guy had a maid. He was, doing the lovey-doveys with the maid. She got pregnant. He didn't want anybody to know. She was going to tell the wife. He murdered her, and put her in the oil tank. And then welded the oil tank up, and then lived there. People just like, she left the country. She was South American. She fled. I don't know. So they just
technique.
Yeah. So that was just it. They forgot about it. He died. She died. Whatever. The kids sold the house. New families in. In the 90s, they renovate the house. They're taking out the oil tank. They find a mummified corpse in the oil tank. His family goes crazy. Nobody wants to live there. And I'm like, $60,000. I can have a ghost roommate. I don't know. Woman.
New idea for a story.
That is, it is always about the story. Always.
Well, the Amityville Horror is a wonderful double layered thing to explore, because you not only have the haunting stuff, but you also have the original Ronald DeFeo murder massacre that happened, which inspired the whole thing. It's like you can almost look at it from a true crime perspective and a paranormal perspective.
And then you could look at it as like the hoax that went after it, like, because I heard that the people that bought the house, they were going to go bankrupt, so they made up this whole big story to get out of their mortgage.
George Lutz.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Try to stump Brian. It ain't going to happen.
The Lutz family. They're the ones that the Jay Anson book is based on, in the movie and everything.
Here you go, guys. You're getting some love from Eddie's Gaming over here.
Thank you.
Oh, that's very nice. Thank you so much.
Like my wife, whenever we go for vacation, we always go to New England, because my wife is hoping that we can rent a haunted hotel room, bed and breakfast, but it has to be rental. Like, it's just to experience the ghosting, just for the weekend ghosting, and then we go. But if there was even a hint of a ghost in our house, we'd be out the next day. She would be like,
wow.
It'd be over.
The house that I'm living in right now that we got because the old timer fell down the steps and died. You know, we didn't know that when we moved in. I just figured he aged out. You know, like we all do. So, and he was an Elvis fan, and you could look up like local Channel 12 news during Elvis's birthday. They would come to this house because every square inch of this house was covered in Elvis memorabilia. Like if you Google map my house, you will see Elvis statues and paraphernalia all over the house, you know, and so every once in a while I'll just blast Elvis, and I'm like, "This is for you, Peter. You know, don't bother me. I'm a good guy."
yeah, John. It's really weird for somebody to completely cover the inside of their house with all this weird memorabilia stuff that they love.
Yeah.
That is
Turn
awesome.
That got me the house too, because the woman the granddaughter was selling the house, and
I was making fun of you.
She goes, "Do you like Elvis?" I said, "Well, ma'am, there's only two kinds of people in this world: people who like Elvis and effing assholes." And she's like, and then she goes to my wife behind my back and says, "There's a stray cat that keeps coming to the house. Would you feed him if you bought the house?" My wife instantly fell in love. "Where's this stray cat? I want to pet it." So she told everybody else, "These guys are getting a house." So thank you, Elvis.
That is great.
We named the cat Smeagol because he's always sneaking around.
All right, so monsters. Do we have any more monster?
Have you guys seen ghosts or anything in real life? Have you ever found a ghost, Fabrizio?
I don't talk about that.
No, nothing that I can really say definitively or even vaguely that I've seen a ghost. A few like weird things that have happened, but nothing that really freaked me out. Speaking of houses, though, this was one of those things that, as a writer, maybe you look a little into it more than somebody else would. We were looking for houses, and we were waiting for the real estate agent. And it was kind of getting dusky, so I'm just kind of taking a walk around the house. And there's a little basement window, and it's kind of all dirty, so I kind of poke my head in there. And it is the most perfectly lit basement with just like a shot of light coming through the window, a butcher block, a really well-worn butcher block, stained, and a butcher knife just stuck right in the middle of it.
Oh, that's
and I'm
awesome.
like, this, I mean, there's no dead bodies or anything. I'm like, that just looks like it was staged just for us. Yeah. And my head is like, okay, there's all these sorts of things. Meanwhile, other people are like, hey, that looks like a nice basement, and it comes with a butcher block.
You know what's funny that you
Did
said
you go in
that?
and take pictures for reference?
I should have.
Do you have recurring scary dreams at all?
Mm-hmm.
I have you made
lots of them.
I have a recurring scary dream, and it's always a house, and it's a house that I'm familiar with. Like I'm at a friend's house or you know, like a childhood friend's house or a house that I'm living in. And all of a sudden I notice that there's a door that I've never noticed before. And like I'm getting the chills now thinking about this. Dream scares the crap out of me. And I'll go to the door, and the person who owns the house goes, we don't go down there. We don't go down there. You're like, the house is cool as long as we don't go down there. So of course I got to go down there. And they all say the same thing. The devil lives down there. And I open the door, and it's like a 70s, like well-worn carpeted. You get that musty basement smell. And I go down the basement, and it's a couch, and it looks normal, but there's another door in the basement. And like even in the dream, I'm like, don't open that door. Don't open that door. And when I open the door, there's a huge, expansive room that I always wake up, and I never see what's in this room. And I wake up like, I had this dream again, you know, and I've been having this dream for 30 years, like maybe once every couple of years. And oh my God, like all the other dreams, I have the most pleasant, I wake up laughing, I'm smiling, but that once in a while I have that dream, and it, like cold sweats.
All I got to say is, great story title. The devil lives down there. Dibs.
Oh, no. It can only be drawn by you two.
No, that should be yours, John.
I'll write it. I can't draw, but yeah. Brian, you drew it. Fabrizio, you ink it. Oh my God, the devil lives down there.
Yeah,
love it.
That's a brilliant title for story or an album, either one. You got to use that.
That's like the only scary recurring, and and again, like I said, I'm not really like supernatural stuff doesn't scare me, but now here I am telling you all the supernatural stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. Dr. Mask made a comment a while ago. He mentioned like blood. I was talking about the gross monsters, and he said,
yes, I wanted to say something about this too.
He mentioned Bloodroom. I'm like, that's true. And I think it's because it's almost like we shy away sometimes from the things that we really are afraid of. So to me, when Rob is doing I'm like, oh, I couldn't imagine like getting in that headspace. Meanwhile, for Rob, it's like, it's nothing to do these like
doing those draw screens whistling.
But Rob's monsters don't strike me the way I was talking about.
No, not that, but in particular, but just in general, like he has some pretty, and I think like I shy away from the things that really bother me almost.
Oh yeah.
Anyway.
I think Rob draws some really creepy monsters, and he's like whistling, like I don't know, I saw my grandmother today, and he's drawing this disgusting creature, Rob, for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, there's a comic called Blood Realm, also on Alternate Comics, written and drawn by Robert Geronimo, and he's probably insane because of the visions that this guy comes up with.
I love Rob's monsters because just because he draws monsters differently than I do, his you can tell, and you too with your with the Smoke Man and the way he was decomposed, the corpse, you do it. You do it differently than I do. I mean, I love to draw corpses and decomposed bodies, and I love to draw big crazy monsters too, like Rob does too. But I just love that when I look at your stuff or Rob's stuff, like you can clearly see in the choices you're making that your way of doing it is just different and unique. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
I love that, because you do those gross little flaky, rotting pieces of skin coming off and everything. And I think that's so great. But I don't tend to draw corpses that way. I'm more into like drippings, gore, and and slime, and it's all about the crazy teeth, and everything is all exaggerated cheekbones and skull structures, and mine are over the top.
It is interesting. I wonder why that is. We just like I couldn't be Rob for a day, and vice versa. And it is interesting which monsters we tend to draw and how we draw them. We could all do a vampire, and they're all going to be so different.
Mm-hmm. And you do unexpected things like the giant with the hair growing over his nose, and the blindfold over the one character. Like those are things that I would not think of. And I love when visual designs on monsters is coming out of left field, because I guess just being into horror comics and horror art and horror movies and all that stuff, like I feel like I've seen it all in a way, So when somebody comes out of left field and does it in a way that I would never do it, or just looks different than a movie that I've seen, it's
funny because I look
very
at
original.
Your artwork is like to me, I say you're very Gothic inspired. And Fabrizio is definitely like Lovecraft inspired.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
So,
I'm sorry. I was going to say the thing about your characters that are very different is they're very personal, or they're very real looking.
Mine?
Yeah. Yeah, like I mean,
let's just come out with it.
No.
Convention
about monsters, characters like the Gorilla Suit Maniac. I mean, he feels like a real guy.
Oh, that's very nice. Thank you.
I found that fascinating too, because that whole history of Hollywood within the story.
That's all true. Yeah. There's one lie. No, there's one little tiny lie, and there's one big lie in there, but for the most part, it's 99% true. Hollywood history.
I never thought about that there was people that get hired to.
Yeah.
And you know what? I actually felt bad for him when he realized, when he was jumping around as a monkey in the suit, as a gorilla in the suit, and then when he left and he actually saw people in professional, and he was like, they must have been laughing at me when I felt bad for the guy,
Yeah. It was tragic. It was really tragic.
He was the perfect example of a little bit of knowledge is dangerous. Like, like an electrician, there's nothing worse than a second-year apprentice. They know just enough to burn your house down. They're brave enough to go into your electrical panel and start doing things, but they don't have enough knowledge to realize how dangerous it actually is.
Well, that story was a chance for me to get a lot of obsessions out of my system all at once. Which I've talked about to death on other podcasts and things. But
I don't think I'm saying anything wrong by saying it was my favorite issue so far.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
I mean, both of you. Issue 7 art is so good, and I know it was like a 20-year difference between issue 1 and issue 7. And Fabrizio, I mean, what was it? A year difference between issue 1 and issue 2?
Yeah.
And I can't wait for 3.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
So we talked about movies, monsters. We talked about our dreams and personal. So what are your favorite comic monsters?
Go ahead.
Why don't you start, John? While I think of something.
Oh, I mean, Man-Thing. I love Man-Thing. Ever since I got that Power record from as a kid, they put the sound effects of him sloshing through the swamp. They made the sound effects of him rising. I have always loved the Man-Thing.
Man-Thing is great.
Yeah,
I like Swamp Thing more, and I'm not talking about Alan Moore. I'm talking about the original Swamp Thing, the Len Wein and Bernie Wrightson Swamp Thing, because I think I discovered that one first as a kid and read those stories and his inner monologue that he always has going on, and every issue he's fighting a different monster, and Wrightson's artwork I just loved as a kid.
Yeah.
And so I felt a little more personal connection to Swamp Thing, but there's no question. I mean, Man-Thing has that great design with that elephant trunk vine thing hanging down his face.
I found Man-Thing first because of that record I got as a kid. Mm-hmm. But I've grown to love Swamp Thing as probably like my 4th or 5th best comic book character of all time. And I tend to gravitate towards the monsters. I mean, the Thing is a monster.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Ed Grimm is a monster. The only thing that he's lovable is because he's a sweetheart. But can you just imagine if he was, that original personality that he had in the first 10 issues, bitter and angry, he'd be a monster. The scariest monster was my mother when she was. Oh God!
Oh wow!
I need to take a nap now. I can't even. That just hurt my soul, RJ.
Yeah, that's tragic.
Oh, you guys were talking about Bigfoot. RJ knows him personally. He lives next door to him.
Oh yeah. I gotta set up a meeting there, make $1 million.
Yeah. Oh my God, RJ, you just triggered an audience of comic book fans.
Yeah.
That hurts.
We're all traumatized now.
I know.
Go ahead.
My parents never did comics. They were always like, they knew I loved them, and then later on they found out that they were valuable. But they did take my box of comics and put it in the attic when I got bad grades once.
Even as a kid, I didn't fold my comics and put them in my pocket like some people. Even as a kid, they were precious to me, mainly because I didn't have a lot of money growing up, so a comic kind of meant something for me. But I was trying to think about this the other day. What's the first monster that sort of stuck in comics? And there was a few issues of Thor that had Dracula in it, and it doesn't sound like it would be good, Thor versus Dracula, but it really stuck with me. Mm-hmm. That's the first time I can remember sort of a monster in a superhero comic. I think.
Well, I loved Werewolf by Night as a kid.
Yeah, I was waiting for you to say that. Yeah,
I got that whole collection of those, and I bought the omnibus anyway because I just love them. And then I loved Gene Colan's Tomb of Dracula for sure. Yeah. And I loved, I loved the Creature Commandos from Weird War Tales.
Yep.
That was such a dream come true. It was his secret project during World War II that the American military created a Frankenstein monster, a werewolf, and a vampire through scientific experiments, and then sent them on secret missions to kill the Nazis. And I had Weird War Tales issue 100, which had them attacking the Axis powers on the land that time forgot. So there were dinosaurs in it too.
My head would have exploded if I had these comics as a kid.
So there was
God.
So there was a werewolf, a Frankenstein monster, a vampire fighting the Axis on an island full of dinosaurs. It had everything a growing boy needs. It was the greatest comic book ever.
That's got to be the ultimate comic book.
It was great.
As an aside to that, when I had my talk with Chuck Dixon, he said that he has a graphic novel written and drawn, and for the life of me, I can't remember the artist, of the Punisher pursuing his prey into the Savage Land. So it's the Punisher with machine guns and dinosaurs, fighting.
Wow.
Why won't Marvel publish this?
That is awesome.
Yeah, that's a good point. They added G.I. Robot too.
Yeah.
So they actually,
And they added a Medusa.
Yes.
Girl character in it too.
I feel deprived. Like I said, I grew up in the middle of nowhere, PA, and we had a newsstand, and I was at the mercy of this woman who ordered a few books a month. That was it until I was much, much older. I did not get a chance to read any of that stuff.
Yeah, when I was talking with Archie, we talked about that. As a kid, we had the newsstand, we had spinner rack. You go to the 7-Eleven, and what the distributors did was Fantastic Four sold over here, because they're not going to keep sending Fantastic Four when they get returns and they got to eat the profits. So in my neighborhood, you could not get Doctor Strange. Most weird DC stuff you didn't see, but you saw Green Lantern, Flash, Wonder Woman, and Superman. But I wasn't interested. But if I had known Creature Commandos and Weird War Tales existed as a kid, I would have got them.
Man.
Yeah. So I sympathize with you. I got to the point where there was one cigar store that guy always had comic books, and it was near the supermarket, so I'd be like, Ma, I'll go to the food. I'll go supermarket with you. I'll go to the food shopping with you, just so I could sneak off to the cigar store and get comics.
The guy brings up Monsters and Savage Sword of Conan. The one that I remember from that I loved was the Devourer of Souls story. Do you know what I'm talking about, John?
Mm-hmm. No, I believe it or not, I just bought a stack of like 100 Savage Sword of magazines from an apprentice who needed money, but I never read. I was not allowed to read those as a kid. Because they said adult fantasy, so that meant dirty, and we were.
I love Savage Sword of Conan as a kid, but like there was this one storyline that they did, and it was called the Devourer of Souls, and it starts with these. Well, they did a few different stories about this character, but it starts with this cult of really stupid monsters, and you could tell the guy who wrote it. It might have been Fleischer, I think, maybe, but the guy who wrote, I think that was his name. But anyway, the guy who wrote it. You could tell he had a sense of humor about these dumb monsters that are trying to bring the Devourer of Souls to life. So they're drinking the chalice full of blood, and they accidentally, and one starts choking because it tastes bad, and he drops it, and the other one's yelling at him. It was hilarious. It was one of the first times I read Sword and Sorcery is usually written so overly serious. You know what I mean? These were written with a sense of humor, and they were terrific. And I love really stupid monsters. Dim-witted monsters are just lovable to me. I just but that was a great.
How do you guys feel about zombies? I
love them.
We're coming out of, but there was like a zombie hype, for I'd say like a good 7 years, to the point my wife is like, I'm sick of zombies. I don't want to watch a zombie movie ever again.
I think the only zombie comic I read the first collected Walking Dead. That's the only thing I can think of. I wasn't reading like Marvel Zombies or anything like that. That always seemed odd to me.
Well, that's a different thing.
Yeah, I didn't particularly like that. That was like a weird mix of superheroes.
No, I'm not a big fan of genre mixing in the first place, really. Although sometimes I am, but I love superheroes and I love zombies and all that. But I do not like Marvel Zombies, where they made the Marvel characters. That just goes against my cannot compute.
Okay. So the fast zombies or the slow zombies? What do you guys? What's the take on that?
I love them both.
Fast.
You like
slow zombies? Very much in they're almost laughable sometimes, and I get that the sheer volume of them. I understand why, but there's just something about the slow zombies that make me chuckle, and they don't really scare me.
I love them. I love the old Romero movies. I love Day of the Dead especially, even though that's usually most people I think is the black sheep of the George Romero zombie movies, but I love Day of the Dead the best because it has the coolest looking makeups and the coolest looking gore. And also I just love those hateful military guys that are just so awful, they're like EC Comics villains where they're just completely thoroughly evil.
Oh my God.
But Return of the Living Dead,
I
1985, one of my absolute favorites. Yes.
That performance by the guy freaking out, the mortician.
Mm-hmm.
What are you doing over there? That is one of the best performances.
Yeah. And that movie that was a big inspiration for me. And I think that movie had a lot to do with my sense of humor in my comics too. And that's a movie you can find so much like Mad Magazine level tiny jokes all throughout it. It's rich. I love that movie. Yeah. So there's a fast zombie movie.
Absolutely love that movie. I had to, because whenever I see something, I'm like, I have to rectify why there's fast zombies and slow zombies. And my thoughts are, fast zombies, they've just been killed. They don't have rigor mortis yet. Maybe the blood is still warm, but in a couple of days they'll slow down. And if they don't eat, then they'll just wither and die.
Shaun of the Dead is definitely my favorite zombie movie.
Yeah, because it's a legit scary movie and it's a legit funny movie.
Yeah, it's my sense of humor 100%. The British stuff is, so that definitely hits every spot for me.
That movie, I was like excited when I saw that movie because there was such great like tension where I'm laughing, but I'm scared at this. Like when he's going, Pete, yelling up the stairs, Pete.
Yeah.
He realizes Pete just got bit. Pete, like he knows, but he's in denial. And then the other scene that I almost get tears. I find it to be so, is when they're telling him to shoot his mother, and Sean's like, I'm not gonna shoot my mom.
Yeah, it's intense.
It's really like I'm a fan of Simon Pegg for life.
But the other category of zombies that I just love so much is the Lucio Fulci movies from Italy. The Zombie, The Beyond, and The House by the Cemetery.
Zombie, is that when they pull
and City of the Living Dead? Yes. Zombie is amazing. That's the one where you have the underwater scene where the underwater zombie tries to kill the girl that's diving and she gets away, and then the zombie gets attacked by a tiger shark.
Yep.
And you have a zombie, an actor playing a zombie fighting a live tiger shark.
Oh my gosh.
Underwater in the wild.
Yeah.
One of the most amazing sequences any film ever made. And Lucio Fulci was an absolute lunatic, and the gore in his movies is just over the top glorious. And the zombies are so gross and ugly, and they just have that dry, dehydrated, rotted look.
To me, that's the way zombies would look.
I agree. I love that movie. I love the Lucio Fulci movies.
Those movies. I saw them at too young of an age. And
and The Beyond is a zombie movie like that, but with the surreal quality, where you've got the elements of heaven and hell and Lovecraft influence. Where you've got a forbidden book and everything like that, and even some Lovecraft names in there. So those are highly recommended.
It's funny.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, I think now that you were just talking about that, the reason I shy away from zombies is, to me, like the scariest thing is a villain with like extremely high intellect. And like, so knowledge, that's Lovecraft, right? Knowledge is the most dangerous thing. So a person that has knowledge is the most dangerous person. So when you strip that from a monster, it just, for me, I guess it doesn't have anything. I don't know.
But
Maybe.
to me, okay, I get that. But for me, ever since I was a kid, I mean, I always reacted really strongly to monsters that are, okay, whether it's Tusken Raiders in Star Wars, or whether it's Jason Voorhees, or whether it's zombies, or the Mummy, or whatever, but it's like, it's that thing, or whether it's velociraptors in Jurassic Park, any kind of creature like that is just, it exists to kill you.
Yeah.
And it's just this unstoppable, mindless thing that its only programming is to get you. And
I get it.
And I just, when I see anything in a movie, any kind of monster in a movie that is driven that way, mindlessly, I find that intensely scary.
Do you like to know everything? Like, do you feel like in John Carpenter's The Thing, we don't really know anything about the creature. We don't know anything about like what was it a prisoner? Was it an advanced scout? You know, does it just want to survive? Does it want to? And I love that. Like, that doesn't care. We're isolated in Antarctica. We got to end this now for whatever reason. It's we don't know. I love that. Like Lovecraft, we don't really know what's, for the most part. Like Lovecraft is like one guy finds a diary and then we hear the story, so we don't know. Was that guy just crazy? Was did this really happen? I don't know. I like not knowing. I like the mystery, and then I can argue with other people. No, you got that movie wrong.
Depends on the story. I mean, sometimes I want to know more than others. We missed a couple of questions there. The guy asked
about children shouldn't play with dead things. My brother made me watch that, and I'm a disturbed individual because of that.
Get out of the grave, Alan. Yes, I've seen that.
Yeah.
It's enjoyable.
I've seen way too many horror movies at way too young of an age.
Yeah.
My brother used to wake me up in the middle of the night, like my parents were sleeping. It's a school night, and it's 2:00, and I'm like, John, come on, we're gonna watch this. And I thought I had the coolest older brother until I realized he was just too scared to watch him by himself. I was just a willing victim.
Oh, I can't wait till my kid's old enough. That's the conversation for another time. Yes, same with Jaws. That's another great example of a monster that's just relentlessly exists to get you.
Yeah.
I love
you can't
that.
reason with it. You can't you can't bargain with it.
Yeah.
It's just kill or be killed.
The Terminator, yes.
And this something about the ocean is terrifying.
But something about just dumb monster. Or Cujo. Just dumb moronic thing that is just mindlessly trying to kill you. Jason Voorhees is that way. It's like I love that. I
can't reason with him.
Yeah.
What Kevin says, the scary thing isn't the monsters, how we deal with the monsters. Believe it or not, my weird family, we would have like a Thanksgiving, and in my immediate family, it's like 56 people. I got 6 brothers and sisters.
Wow.
And we would have in-depth conversations on what to do in a zombie apocalypse, and we've all agreed that it's like, we'd be like that hillbilly family, and when you see the hillbillies, they're barbecuing and drinking. Look, there's one, and they're shooting at him, and they hit the that's us when the zombies come,
Yeah, I think everybody would turn into that.
Yeah, you have to. Yeah, yeah. The thing was very intelligent, but we never heard it speak.
I think that's a very interesting question to ponder, because there are moments in that movie where it just seems animalistic, and then there's other moments where it's like, well, how could it be doing what it's doing without really understanding what it's doing and understanding the humans?
The thing, it adapted, and when it copied people or whatever, it used their intelligence, because otherwise they would have acted like crazy people.
Right.
It figured us out. Yeah.
Yeah.
And one thing I love about the thing is if you understand Finnish, you get the whole movie plot in the first 5 minutes when the Finns were coming, because they're like, oh, that monster, it's a dog, is a monster, kill it.
Yeah.
It's a good thing I don't understand Finnish.
And they shot him. Yeah.
Do you think the xenomorph from Alien is smart or just singularly focused?
I think it's a hive mind type situation there. I think the Queen has a certain intelligence, and then the soldiers are like, soldier ants, basically, just very big and very vicious.
I never saw The Relic, or maybe I did. Anybody refresh me what The Relic was?
I feel like that's one I saw once, and I never saw it again.
Yeah, I'm sorry, JD. If you could refresh me, maybe I did see it. The Conjuring movies, I never saw the Conjuring movies. I heard they're good.
I love the first 2.
I love them.
Yeah. The third one I felt was a little rushed, but I love the first 2.
Really good.
What's this? My brother-in-law told me
it was tough getting through your uncle's funeral. I said, you didn't even know my uncle. I said, yeah, but your family was there. See, I don't get it. Is there something I'm missing? I don't get it. I remember going to funerals as a kid. I was like, I ain't going in there. Great grandma, I ain't going in there and seeing her.
There's something kind of strange about funerals. I know we have to participate them, but it's a weird thing just to lay out a dead person and kind of hang out with them for a bit.
It is a ritual. I remember my older brother, grandmother, we're in the Catholic Church and the priest is in his robes and vestments with the incense and everything like that. And he just looked at me and goes, this is like a pagan ceremony. This is like a magic spell going on, Ever since then, I like, we'd bless ourselves before dinner. And I'm like, that's a magic spell, always thinking about that. Did you?
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, what we can say?
Somebody was asking about The Cube. Isn't that a movie I heard you bring up recently, John?
I love The Cube.
I thought I heard you talk about that, John.
I think Fabrizio, I think you brought it up.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if I did, but I love The Cube. It's been forever since I saw it, but man, was that good.
What is that? What is that? That's not the movie where Skeletor shows up with that little box.
No, that's Hellraiser.
No, Frank Langella, you know what I'm talking about. The same guy directed Donnie Darko, his second movie.
Southland Tales, is that what it was?
I
that
thought
was
it was
one of his movies. I didn't see any of his movies after Donnie Darko.
But what is The Cube?
The Cube, it's a simple premise. People are stuck in a cube and they have to figure their way out, and there's traps. It's really clever, really well done, and it was a low-budget movie. It's got to be 20 years old, maybe even older, but I remember loving that movie.
I was talking with somebody who brought this up. Now it's going to bother me. I don't yeah, so it's kind of like a Saw movie,
I would say way better than it's much more clever.
Need to get out.
Kind of, yeah. Is it sci-fi or horror? I mean, man, it really is both. I mean, if sci-fi, in my head, sci-fi is very specific in that it's a what if scenario. That what if scenario can be anything in a way. So, it's both, but it's definitely sci-fi.
Well, that begs the question. You said earlier before, Brian, that you didn't like mixing the genres, but I find one of my favorite horror sci-fi movies is Event Horizon.
Oh yeah.
I love this ghost ship in space, and when it warps, the dimension that it warps through is hell. And when it materializes, they bring, oh my God, I want this to be a freaking series.
Yeah, I shouldn't make blanket statements like that, because then you bring up Alien, you bring up the Terminator. They're all mixed genres,
Yeah, humans. That's like. And the true monster was us all along.
Well, that's what Night of the Living Dead is all about, And
The Walking Dead, we are the Walking Dead, Hey, Praetor, good to see you. Thank you for showing up. Thank you.
Hello.
And then, we already talked about this. Is it sci-fi or horror? Yes.
I mean, yes.
Like, well, we talked about Alien as a sci-fi horror movie, and we, everybody loves that.
Yeah, it's a haunted house movie in outer space, basically.
Yeah. I love that. I love the idea. I know this is weird, but there's an episode of The Next Generation, Star Trek The Next Generation, where they find this gas giant, and they find that there's life on this gas giant defying all the odds, and that there's like a little area that could sustain life. So they know a ship crashed there, and they're going to go in there and rescue them. So of course they send the captain, the doctor, you know what I mean? It's this super dangerous place. Let's send the 3 biggest people on the ship. And they go to and it's a casino, and it's all crazy, and they don't know it, and they find out that it's a human that's dying, and these benevolent aliens that live in the gas giant are keeping this thing alive and slowing its death, and then giving it like its greatest memories, and its greatest memories are based on a book that it was reading at the time, because the guy's brain dead kind of thing. And I don't know why it's not supposed to be scary. But that episode terrifies me of these aliens creating this false environment and manipulating memory. I tell my wife, this episode scares me. She's like, it's not scary. It's kind of a bad episode. I was like, I know. I don't know what it is. But like, to me, The Notebook is a horror movie.
Agreed.
Yeah, I can't watch that. Pandorum. I think I know that movie. Pandorum is another... Is that with the girl from what's that movie with which the original Conjuring? I think it is Pandorum. If it's the movie I'm talking about with James Spader, that was a good movie. If it's the movie I'm thinking about, I didn't realize it, but that Sting sounds to space. Oh yeah, there was a Space 1999 was a show that it was like controversial. Like I wanted to like it because it was sci-fi, but everybody in my family hated it, and we watched Star Trek instead. So I gotta watch it.
Martin Landau was in that.
I can do what I want,
wasn't he? Wasn't Martin Landau in that? Space
yeah.
Josh Howard. I think Josh Howard likes that. He's a fan of that.
The way future of 1999, the moon leaves. You know.
Well, we learned from Thundar the Barbarian that in the 90s the moon cracked in half.
Yep, yeah. Far future. I did a showcase on the origin of Star-Lord, and the comic came out in 1976, and he became Star-Lord in 1989 of
right.
that, and everybody dressed like Logan's Run. They had flowing robes, you know, and
well, also Escape from New York, isn't that 1997?
Yeah, I think so. Escape from New York.
I love stuff like that.
We even passed Back from the Future, right?
Yeah.
Was it 2015?
I don't know. We're getting pretty close to Escape from New York right now, I think. So that
for real.
I legit want to escape from New York.
Well, I escaped from California last year, so.
No, James Spade is not in Pandora. He's in a different type. Actually, it seems he's one of those. Yes. It was an Alan Smithy film. I know what you're talking about, and I'm gonna freak out until I know the Escape from New York is one of my favorite. That's another movie that we went for my friend's birthday party. You know, we went to go see Escape. I love that.
Good.
I do.
I'm number one.
In third grade at the talent show, me and my friend recited a scene from Escape from New York as our entry in the talent show. It was the whole, if you're not out of here in 30 seconds, you die.
I took an acting class, and I was like, all right. And these people were so talented in this act. I had no business being there, but I humored the teacher. So we had to do like a final project. Did you ever see Bad Lieutenant?
Oh yeah.
You know the scene when Harry Keitel's like, he's yelling at Jesus. Where the F we? That's the scene that I did for my final. Everybody was like looking away. I had so much fun.
That's hilarious.
He was like, I'm passing you because I don't want you to come back. Alan Smithy. Alan Smithy is the name. For those who don't know, Alan Smithy is the name that is used on a film when the director doesn't want his name to be used. Matter of fact, Dune was an Alan Smithy film.
The TV miniseries version of the David Lynch
I did not know that.
Dune movie was an Alan Smithy.
Hellraiser in Space was an Alan Smithy film.
Oh, was it?
Yeah. I remember a girl I was dating, we went to the movie theater, and I just went, oh my God, this is an Alan Smithy film. This is going to be awesome. Yeah. And she goes, is he one of your favorite directors? I said, oh yeah. I never missed an Alan Smithy film.
Snake Plissken, I heard you were dead.
Yeah. Thank you, Praetor. This was going to kill me. Supernova was it. And if you get the DVD and watch all the deleted scenes, it's really freaky. Yeah, Supernova. That's a good bad sci-fi movie. Thank you, Praetor. Yeah. So we went a little off topic with comics and monsters, but I'm having fun. So what like right now, I was talking to Bryan about like mixing genres. I had an idea of like a horror Western, and I started writing the script. Bryan actually gave me some really great advice that stopped me from being dead on tracks. Yes, you did. Because I was talking to you about it for so long, and you were just like, John, you've been telling me about this world for like 2 weeks, but you never mentioned the characters. You said you said without the characters, there's no story. And I was like, so I thank you for that. It was hard to hear, but you were absolutely 100% right. And then I've been noticing that there's horror Westerns everywhere. So like, is it trite already? Like, did I catch this before?
I mean, personally, I don't see anything wrong with almost doing the exact same story. If two people take the same plot premise, they're going to do two different movies, 100%. Mm-hmm. I always said this. Some point in the future, whenever I have time, I want to take Shadow over Innsmouth, replace the main character with Horace H. Hoover, and just see what happens. Because again, you can start with everything can be the same, all the other characters, the cult, but you get a different story. And I kind of look at that. If you're doing a horror Western, it's going to be different than somebody else's horror Western. Right. So just do it.
Because Horace would handle that differently than the narrator of that story.
Yeah.
I'm trying to picture Horace in that room when they were trying the doorknobs. He'd probably open the door and invite them in. Not either oblivious to the danger or not caring about the danger. That would be awesome.
I will say, as far as Western horror films, have you seen Bone Tomahawk?
I was just about to bring up Bone Tomahawk.
I have not seen that yet.
Brian, have you seen that?
I have not seen that yet.
Do not watch that with your wife.
It's been on my list of movies I need to see for years, and I just haven't gotten around to it.
Matter of fact, Bone Tomahawk is what inspired my idea. So I don't want to say ripoff, but it's Bone Tomahawk is phenomenal. And it's funny because I remember it in black and white. I just rewatched it. It's not in black and white. But I remember it in black and white. It's Kurt Russell is the sheriff in a town, and one of the girls in the town, she's a nurse. She's been abducted. And
no spoilers.
What's that?
No spoilers.
Yeah, I'm just telling you the present. And the husband wants to find out, and they're just like, oh yeah, they were abducted by these Indians, and so they talk to the Indian. The Indian goes, don't blame them on me. They're not Indians, and that's. What are these things that abduct him? And I will just say that in my Dungeons & Dragons campaign, those are orcs.
Cool. I got to check it out. I just keep hearing too many good things about it.
Yeah, it's something.
You if the premise scares you, there's 2 scenes in this movie that are going to leave you with scars. Brian,
awesome.
Please, I beg you.
All right. I got to watch it now.
Yeah.
Great dialogue. Dialogue can get you really far. Though with me, you can basically have a movie in a room. If it's cool dialogue, I'll sit there and watch 2 hours of it. So this at minimum has great dialogue.
So Kurt Russell's having breakfast and he's sitting in his long johns, with the suspenders dripped over like you'd see in every cowboy movie, and his wife is smiling and everything. And the guy comes in, it's like, the dumb deputy character comes in and he starts talking to Kurt Russell just looks up and goes, "What are you doing standing here in my breakfast?" Love that line. Such a good line. And just little things like the guy pulls out a telescope, and they're all like, in the midst of all this horror, they're like, what, they're like little kids playing with the telescope. And he goes, "Yeah, I got it from a German." And then that's it. They're like, "Hand me the German for the rest of the movie. Hand me the German." Love that.
Here's another one. Did you see Ravenous?
Yes. Love that.
That's a good one.
Tell me about that.
It's one of the only. Well, I don't want to tell you too much about what it's about because I might spoil it. But it takes place. What would you say, Fabrizio? It's
Civil War.
Is it Civil War or Revolutionary War? Or is it? No, it's Civil War, right? Yeah.
It has been like 20 years since I saw it.
Yeah, me too. But it's an interesting one because it's set up like a Western, but it's out in the middle of the forest in the Midwest somewhere, so it's in the snow. and horror comes into their little camp, and it's terrific. It's really good. You must see it.
Did you see Cold Skin with Ray Stevens?
No, but I've heard about that one.
Yeah, that's a Lovecraft type movie. Good movie, and I don't want to spoil it. And don't watch that with your wife.
I will confess I'm bad about keeping up with the new ones because so often they just fall short for me. But meanwhile, I'm like obsessed with always looking for more old stuff before my time that I never saw before. I'm always looking for weird, obscure stuff. So like that's what I'm always on the internet hunting for, is those old ones.
There's a movie. It's gonna drive me nuts. It's set in Italy. An American goes to Italy and he finds this beautiful woman. She's dressed in a red, like you can't not miss her.
What era are we talking?
I'm gonna say within 10 years.
Okay.
I can't the exact
because I haven't kept up as well as I should lately.
The woman picks him up and does the lovey-doveys with them, and turns out she's the monster. I don't want to spoil it any more than this, but it's not particularly scary. It's creepy. It gives me a very Lovecraft vibe, tentacles and everything. But just it's such. if you want me to spoil it, I'll spoil it, but I don't want to. But it's
No, don't spoil it.
I will find out the movie and I will put the name of the movie in the description.
Okay, cool.
But I think it's not particularly scary, but it is a good horror movie.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man! So I wanted to ask you this, and I kind of got distracted. Oh, I asked you what your favorite monster is. Now, if you were to be cursed by that gypsy woman who's going to turn you into a monster, what monster would you want to be?
Want to be?
Yeah, like if you had to be. You're getting cursed, but you could choose the monster. You're going to become a monster.
Okay. As a kid, I would have said the Wolfman because he was the coolest, or the werewolf from The Howling because they were even cooler. But as an adult, I would definitely say a vampire.
Same.
Because for adult reasons, there's so much more you could do with that.
Yeah. An Anne Rice vampire wouldn't be that bad.
No, I think I'd be more like Jerry Dandridge in Fright Night. More that kind of modern day suburban, minding my own business, but you know.
Prater is the movie Spring. I don't know Prater, but I will look it up and I'll put the title of that movie in the description for anybody who's curious. Did you hear about I can't remember the director's name of the original Fright Night, but did you hear
Tom Holland?
Did you hear the sequel that he wanted to make?
Yes. It was a great premise. I thought there was a Fright Night 2, and I saw it when it came out, but it had some fun scenes in it, but didn't hold a candle to the original.
Do you want to tell the premise of that, or do you want me to tell the premise?
Go ahead.
The survivor, the kid, goes back to his town, and I think he wants to buy that house that the vampire lived in, or he goes to explore the house. I forget why, but he wants to get to that house for whatever reason, and he goes in there and he finds Evil, his creepy little psychic. He's a vampire and he's alive, and he's trying to resurrect the main vampire. You know, what's his name? Sarandon. Chris Sarandon.
Yeah.
Why is that movie made? I wouldn't say a remake. It would be perfect because they're all aged out. You know, I think it would be great.
Yeah. He came up. I forget when that was revealed online, but it made me go, oh, I would have loved to have seen that. You know. Jerry
there you go. He wants you to become a vampire, so we can get 300 issues of HHH. There you go.
I can do my McFarlane special edition homage cover.
That's pretty funny, actually. Jerry Dandridge, that's the vampire from Fright Night.
Yeah, Fabrizio's drinking blood. I got deadlines.
I will say this. I don't know if anybody in chat or anybody has read the Necroscope novels by Brian Lumley.
I remember those.
Some of my favorite stuff. Definitely not Anne Rice, the antithesis of Anne Rice kind of stuff. I mean, these were vampires. They were hardcore. They were violent. Some were like Vikings and Crusaders, and really great stuff.
What do you think of the what was it, Underworld with Kate Beckinsale? Did I say the name right?
Kate Beckinsale's fun to look at.
Yes. Well,
she is. I mean, I will watch those movies. So.
Yeah, so they're visually eye candy, aren't they?
I had to love the vampires because at least like they were monsters, but the werewolves were just guys. There was such low. You'd see the shadow in a wolf form, and then you'd hear the fight, and then you come back. It's like, don't make a werewolf movie and you can't afford to make werewolves.
The second Underworld is a little better from what I recall.
I remember that.
I think they had a bigger budget, so they did do some
there was some great creature effects in the second one. And there was one even further down the line, and I can't they all blur together for me pretty much, but there was one further down the line where they went back in time and told like the origin story, like in the ancient times. Do you see that one, Fabrizio? It was the third or fourth one. You know what I'm talking about? And they actually did the werewolves really cool in that, you know?
Yeah. So they didn't use any of the original characters because it was a prequel. Even some of the
It was the only one without Kate Beckinsale.
Yeah.
But it was actually pretty good. And it had a cool soundtrack, I remember too. Those movies are cheeseball, but they're fun to look at.
we've been talking for 2 hours. Is there anything that we left out? Anything that you wanted to bring up and I talked too much and made you
Let's
wait?
talk for another hour about mummies.
I'll talk about
I'm just kidding.
Mummies are zombies that retain their
I was joking, John. Next time on the sequel, we'll cover mummies.
Mummies.
Anyway.
Oh, this is cool. This is fun.
Yeah, it was really fun. We got to do this again.
Yeah, I enjoy this. I think this is exactly what I started my channel for, to talk to people about things that I enjoy, and I'm glad to know that throughout this wide world there's a bunch of lunatics that enjoy Lovecraft and monsters and comic books and toys, you know, and you know, I just think it's so great. I mean, I got a little sappy today on Twitter, and I just thanked everybody who's ever been on my channel before. You know, I feel like I've succeeded my dreams. Like if it ends tomorrow, I did everything I wanted to do with my channel. I'm so happy.
That's awesome.
Well, no, hey, thanks for having us, and thanks for always being such a big supporter and cheerleader for our comics. You know,
yeah, I love Alterna. I love the whole everything about the company. All the guys are great. You know, the comics are great. I love the way that they feel. You guys get comics. You guys obviously love comics. You know, I couldn't picture any other like Alterna. I'm getting like emotional talking about it, but I do think it's like the best comic book company. It's like the company that like just it should be bigger. It should everybody anybody who likes comic books. I'm formulating my words wrong because I actually did get emotional. Anybody who likes comic books should be getting Alterna comic books because these are guys that get it. You know, Brian gets it, Ron Geronimo gets it, Fabrizio gets it, you know, Wes Locker gets it. You guys, Pete Samedi, you know, his comic, King Cryptid, you know,
I think it's a company full of lifers,
who
just don't know what else to do. It's like Rob talks about this a lot. You know, it's like we have our ideas, like we just have to get them out of our heads. We have to write these stories and draw these things. Yeah. It's like we'd be doing it whether we were getting published or not, probably.
I mean, to know that other people read them and like them is just
astonishing. Yeah, it just surprises me every day that anyone cares.
Well, people do care. That's just it. Like the problem is, like, I think more people would care if like we could just like sneak into the house and throw some Alterna comics on, you know, pick up their X-Men, throw a couple of HHH under there, you know what I mean? And then run out like a twisted Santa Claus or something. You know,
well, I mean, I always,
you know, because they're good comics. Like you guys really are putting out like the best. I get like I legit get excited. It's funny because whenever Alterna Comics, I'll put the link into the descriptions. Whenever you guys do the campaigns, I don't even look at the covers. I don't want to know anything. So when I open them up, I'm like, oh my god, you know, it's so cool. It's here, you know. I don't know.
That's awesome.
I like that. You know, I think.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's such.
That's great.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for saying that.
Well, we have Tell Folks to Read, House of Mystery, Ghost, Chamber of Chills. Yeah, Tales. Yeah, these are all great comics.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like I said, I wasn't into horror comics as a kid, you know, and now
Ghost is awesome.
You know, I just started getting
all those inspired my book. I mean, I have to tell you, I grew up reading all those. House of Mystery, House of Secrets, Ghosts, all those were fantastic. I mean, yeah, just love that stuff.
Yeah. So I guess we'll call it a night. I promised to take my wife to Chick-fil-A. And we got 3 days of doing nothing. So this is going to be awesome. I'm just going to write some scripts out and read some comics. You guys doing anything for the 3 day? Well, 3 day weekend. I don't know if you're off.
I'm off. I'm doing literally the same thing besides Chick-fil-A.
Good for you. What else do you want? What else do you want?
I've been slammed with stuff to do the last few days, and I haven't barely got any time to work on my comics. So my wife, God bless her, said there's a birthday party at one of the kids at my little girl's kindergarten class is having a birthday party. She's like, I'll take her to that this weekend so you can get some drawing time.
Childless weirdos over here.
Yes.
Yes.
So anyway, I'm gonna get some time to work on my book tomorrow. Or Saturday, whatever day it is.
I just want to thank everybody in the chat. I want to thank RJ for showing up. RJ from the Fourth Age. I'll put links in the description. Anybody in the chat who has a comic or anything, send me the link. I'll gladly put it in. I want everybody in the world to read comic books. It will be a better world, and I want Fabrizio to not have to drink blood to finish HHH 300. I want him to quit his job and do comics all the time. I want Bryan chained in that dark basement over there. That's actually a coffin behind him, if you can see that box. He sleeps. RJ says he has 3 days. Good. Send me the link, RJ, because I can't remember anything anymore. But thank you, everybody in the chat. This was a lot of fun. For those of you who are here for the first time, thank you so much. I'm just having a blast doing this. If I ever do come out with a comic book, it's because of this channel. It's because of guys like Bryan giving me advice and Fabrizio helping me out, bouncing ideas off of them, and they're all encouraging. The internet's been a wonderful place. If the internet is a bad place, come here and hang out. We'll talk comics. Thank you, everybody. And you guys, I talked a lot. You guys say what you want to say, and I'll be quiet.
Good, Fabrizio.
Thanks, everybody, for joining. I appreciate it. Look out for the next Horace H. Hoover, and I have a YouTube channel as well.
Yes.
Yeah, and thanks, everybody. I really appreciate all the kind words. And for those who haven't read my book, Wolf and Batsy, it's about a werewolf and a vampire wandering the earth looking for a place to call home, but everywhere they go, they end up eating people and getting run out of town. It is silly and goofy and funny and gory and violent and it's all for good time. so go to alternatecomics.com and check it out.
Thanks a lot, everybody. Good night.
All right.
Night.
Have a happy 3-day weekend, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.